let's go to someone who is a very distinguished lawyer, our friend Jonathan Turley, George Washington University law professor, constitutional law attorney, and Fox News contributor. Jonathan, it's great to see you. I don't really understand any of this, so I'm going to totally rely on you for this interview. You may have to ask the questions and give your own answers to this, because I don't get this. What exactly are these charges going to be, or what do you think they're going to be?
Well, that's what we have to wait to see. If there is an indictment following this letter, there usually is. These letters are taken as a virtual guarantee of an indictment. Now, this is a special counsel, so he could be just sort of dotting the I's and crossing the T's and not indict Trump in the long run. But most of the money in Washington is that an indictment's forthcoming. If so, it may be one of the most controversial cases in history. If Smith brings charges based on that speech that you quoted from, I think it will be likely struck down on appeal. In my view, Trump's speech on January 6th was entirely protected under the First Amendment and under governing cases, one called Brandenburg, which says that you cannot criminalize this type of speech. Now, he may be trying, that is, Smith may be trying for some other angles. He may argue that Trump's efforts to oppose the certification, present a separate slate of electors, constitute a crime. That is also going to be controversial because the Democrats used this very same law repeatedly to challenge Republican presidents. Actually, the chairman of the January 6th committee was one of those who previously challenged certification. Now, the third possibility is that they're going to base it on this idea that Trump really didn't believe what his lawyers were telling him, that is, John Eastman and others, that he could stop this certification. But that also would be a new law and not very good law in the making. You'd have to prove that Trump clearly believed they were wrong. I mean, Trump had a division of lawyers. The White House counsel disagreed with Eastman, as did I, and many others. But he also had other lawyers who told him, no, you can do this. It's hard to see how you can criminalize that choice between lawyers.
You don't think, so that's an interesting angle, too. All those are interesting angles. I thought, just because I'm a layperson, that they were looking for some kind of insurrection charge, Jonathan Turley, and I don't see it. I'm not sure anybody sees it. And I think on the other side of that question, Jonathan, normal average person looks at this and they think of politics and weaponization or whatever, but it sure looks like the cards are scrambled against Donald Trump.
Well, most polls show that the public does not view January 6th as an insurrection, nor do I. It was a riot. It was a protest that got out of hand. And that doesn't excuse the people that were charged. But the polls indicate that the public doesn't buy this argument. Now, if Smith is trying to litigate an insurrection claim, I think he'll lose in the long run. But in the interim, I think he will even further deepen our divides. He's been a controversial prosecutor in a few respects. The McDonald case was a case he brought against the Republican governor of Virginia. 8-0 was the vote of the Supreme Court rejecting his overextension of federal law to make that prosecution. The Supreme Court really rebuked him and the rest of the team for stretching the law. This had better not be another McDonald case because the public won't stand for it, and we don't need that type of division. So we'll have to see if he has new evidence. But right now, I have to tell you, I'm leery as to how he would make this a criminal case.
Jonathan, this chap, Jack Smith, so he's investigating Mar-a-Lago, which is about classified documents, whatever one's side is on or one's position is. How did he get to January 6th? Was that always part of his, assignment?
That was. The original mandate was in two parts. One was January 6th, one was Mar-a-Lago. Many of us thought that January 6th was put in there just to satisfy people on the Hill and to give Smith a way to show that he's balanced, to say that he would indict on one but not the other. This doesn't look like that. I mean, usually when you get a target letter, it's deadly serious. And he could very well, as early as next week, bring an indictment.
I mean, you know, you have to pardon me for my tongue-in-cheek intro, but I mean, to me, it looks like they want to put Trump away for hundreds of years, so he's not going to run against Biden for presidency. Now, that's just me being me. I can't help myself.
Well,
but I think a lot of
the
people...
problem with...
No, go ahead, please. All I was going to say, Jonathan,
well,
I think a lot of people out there are thinking the same thing. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the one interesting wrinkle here, of course, is that if Trump were elected or a Republican was elected, he could be pardoned. He could even give himself a self-pardon. So Smith might not even see a trial if these cases go beyond the election, because you can pardon in advance. You don't have to wait for a conviction.
Jonathan, outside the direct realm of law, I mean, to some extent, aren't all these cases going to be determined on Election Day? That is, if Trump gets to Election Day. I mean, to some extent, the jury here is going to be the people, the voting public of the United States.
I think that that's the interesting thing about this election, is that these cases are going to have the largest jury in history. The American people are likely to vote on what they think about these cases. And the polls indicate that they view these cases as political. And that's surprising to me. You know, Mar-a-Lago is a fairly conventional case, and there's arguments on both sides. But the public still views this as a pile-on, that these are really political prosecutions.
And there may be, what, one more coming in Atlanta?
That's right. So you could end up having 4 indictments. And those state indictments are not subject to the pardon power. Of course, they can be pardoned in a given state. I wouldn't count on that in New York.
Well, I'll tell you, one thing Trump said today is right. We've never seen anything like this. Not even close. Would you agree with that, Jonathan?
No, we have not.
I mean, it's really wild.
I absolutely would agree on that.
All right. Well, as always, sir, thank you for helping us out. We appreciate it very, very much.